Hey everybody, today Deadlock got another patch as its bi-weekly schedule was shifted one day, meaning the patch was delayed until today, but we finally got it. And even though I am wearing a Path of Exile hoodie right now, and I played Path of Exile today, I still got a chance to get a couple games in and to read the patch notes, and I wanted to cover the most important changes with you guys today, so let's get into it. Starting things off, there's a new hero, Raven, in Hero Labs. There is no new hero that was added to the official roster, so now we just have a total of, I believe, 8 Hero Labs heroes, yes. And there still hasn't been one Hero Labs heroes that has been added to the game. I think it's been almost 2 months since Mirage was added, which was the last hero that was added. Now you can look at Raven's kit on your own in-game if you just go to the hero tab, click on show experimental heroes. This video is not really a good way to show Raven's kit, and it still clearly has a lot of work to be put into it. It's not anywhere close to finished. I'll let you guys check it out on your own. Now in this patch we got some new models, for example for Mirage, some new animation, bug fixes, changes to the map design, etc. I'm not going to talk too much about those, and instead I'm going to focus on the things that matter most. So first of all, a lot of people were complaining about levers, especially people of, I would say, the lower or average ranks, for example Archon, and now there's a new mode which is well, it's more like an option in the queue, which is called extra competitive. So if you go in game, you can select this option, and basically it'll let players know that you want competitive matches with high levels of competitiveness and coordination, communication, etc., and that you would like to play with like-minded allies. Hopefully this helps reduce the levers by having more serious people in your games, but we don't know for sure, because if everybody selects this, then effectively it's worthless. So I guess let me know in the comments how that's been playing out for you. If you want to enable the setting, all you have to do is go in game and click on the queue options top right, and then select extra competitive right here. Another matchmaking change that will impact a lot of you is that the matchmaker will now try to prioritize each team having at least 2 frontliners when it has the option to do so. One thing that is kind of unclear is what it means by a frontliner, what heroes are considered frontliners. For example, is it Mo and Krill, Geist, Abrams, Shiv, etc., Warden? We don't really know which heroes are considered frontliners at the moment by Valve. I have my own definition of that, but regardless, it'll try to have each team having at least 2 of them if possible. As far as gameplay changes go, ability range now has diminishing stacking, and same for ability duration. This means that if you buy a bunch of different sources of them, it'll stack significantly less. So if you have, let's say if you have the kinetic dash upgrade as well as superior duration, etc., it's not going to be as worth to go a ton of duration or a ton of range. This is a nerf to Dynamo and Viscous in particular, but to basically any hero that cares about duration and range. And it should help bring Dynamo down to a more bearable level. Fire rate also has a cap, so now it's a maximum of minus 50% that can be applied. I believe that this is what this wording means. I'm not 100% sure on it though, so if somebody else thinks otherwise, let me know in the comments. It looks like they're nerfing sprint boots overall, so they're making all heroes have a base 0.5 sprint, and if heroes already had sprint, they just have an extra 0.5 on top of it, and sprint boots and enduring speed give a little bit less sprint speed, so that they're not as mandatory of an item. The urn now limits your movement to a fixed 13. So this what this means is basically, even if you use abilities, you cannot move faster than 13 meters per second. So if you're Mo burrowed, if you're Haze invisible, if you're Warden with a bunch of move speed and Veil Walker and things like that, you still cannot go faster than 13 meters per second. Cannot be reduced, cannot be increased. You can't do anything about it. The urn spawn points also is no longer random. Not a huge deal for most people, but a change that I like. We got a bunch of numbers adjusted on the patron. So the patron is overall weaker earlier, and it's a little bit tankier later on. Not a huge deal. Probably, I don't expect this to affect the game too much. Same thing for the tick-based soul system. So the bottom 2 players on a team now get some money. Once again, I don't expect this change to affect the gameplay much. Double soaking is now officially dead, so you can't do it at all. Basically, how they fixed it is, I'll let you guys read this if you want, but the TLDR of this is that once you participate in 4 soul orb share events per trooper wave, if you go participate in more, instead of duplicating the souls, it'll share them, meaning that effectively it's not worth doing because you'll be griefing your other player, as far as I understand it. And they also reverted all these other changes that they made to make double soaking harder. So Guardians dealing more damage to troopers, dealing more damage to taking more damage from troopers players, the range was lessened, and the troopers did more damage to each other. All of this was reverted. Now, as far as the item changes, we're going to start with the weapon items, and I'm going to go just as a more TLDR fashion. If you want to read the patch notes, as always, link will be in the description below. As far as weapon items, we saw an overall nerf of all the 500 cost weapon items in general. I think they were extremely valuable, and they contributed to making gun builds just extremely strong, even if you didn't put a lot of value into them. Berserker now builds into Frenzy, so that's a pretty decent change. Frenzy is going to be more expensive now, but it's going to have the Berserker passive. And on top of that, we've got a bunch of adjustments. The one that stands out to me the most is Spellslinger Headshot, which the proc bonus was changed from 3% Spirit Power to 3% Spirit Amp. Might not seem like a big deal, but it's a huge deal because Spirit Amp gives you a lot more damage than Spirit Power did in most situations, because it'll amp your Spirit with damage by a certain amount. So now at max stacks, you get 36% Spirit Amp. So let's say that you were doing 100 Spirit damage, you'll be doing 136, but in most cases, you're most likely doing hundreds of Spirit damage, which means that it's going to help your damage a lot more than it did previously, because previously in most situations, it would just give you a maximum of 36 Spirit Power, which really wasn't all that much. Now we've got a bunch of other modifications. I think the biggest one would be Sharpshooter. So Sharpshooter now reduces your fire rate by 10% and move speed by 0.5, but it increases your damage even more. So now you get a total of 100% damage if you combine the regular weapon damage increase plus the far range weapon damage increase. But it does slow you and your fire rate, but this gives you an insane amount of damage, so it might be very strong. All the other changes, while significant, are not interesting enough for me to cover in a video. Feel free to read the patch notes if you're interested in those. Let's move on to vitality items. So in vitality items, there's a couple things I'd like to highlight. First of all, Veilwalker was nerfed, 4-second extra cooldown, and now when you get shot, it requires 1 second to go back invisible rather than 0.25. This is a pretty big change, and I think it's for the best. I don't think it's enough. I think Veilwalker is still going to be very, very strong, but it is in the right direction. Metal Skin was buffed, and overall, Debuff Remover was changed from 10% max HP heal to 300 HP. This will make Debuff Remover stronger earlier on because it's a flat amount of health. And Leech now upgrades from Healbane and no longer provides cooldown reduction. In general, in this patch, you guys will see that cooldown reduction has been reduced, and ultimates with talents that gave them -2 cooldown have also been reduced in general. So they have been listening to my feedback on that, and hopefully they keep going in that direction. As far as spirit item goes, there's a lot of numbers adjustments, and I think most of them are pretty good. I don't have a ton to say about them. I think the biggest one is Silence Glyph now pierces through all enemies in the path, which seems completely insane. I haven't done a lot of testing with this, so I'll leave it up to you guys to test this and see if you can get multiple people silences, etc. But it seems insanely strong, and the projectile and collision size was also buffed a lot, which means that it should be pretty easy to hit. So that's a big change. And the other big change is with Refresher, with the cast delay being increased from 0.3 to 0.6 seconds. This might not seem like a big change, but it'll make it much harder for Dynamo to get 2 singularities in the same spot as he did before, because now people will have time to use their warp zone or even maybe dash away in time before he gets a second one. Let's get into the hero changes, and there's a lot of really spicy ones, so I'm going to jump straight to them. A lot of them aren't really worth talking about much. For example, Abrams just got some slight changes. Bebop got some changes. I mean, some of them are interesting. I want to talk a little bit about Dynamo. Dynamo got his cooldown nerfed significantly by 24 seconds on his ultimate, so that combined with some of the item nerfs, etc., might be enough to take Dynamo out of like double S tier and just put him into a spot where he's very strong, but maybe not the most oppressive character in the game. Other than that, nothing super interesting with Dynamo. Grey Talon, however, got a lot of really interesting stuff. So Immobilizing Trap has been changed to Spirit Snare, and what this does is that this applies a curse debuff in the area. So let me show you guys what that looks like in game. All right, so we're in game, and basically you don't need any upgrade to do this. You just need to throw your Spirit Snare, and if I see, I'll throw it, it'll arm, and the moment it arms, as you can see, it'll curse the person for 1.75 seconds. Now, one thing is you can actually force it to trigger early by shooting an arrow in the center, shooting a charge shot. So if I go in the air, I throw the trap and instantly charge shot, it'll apply the curse immediately. Now, this might not seem like a huge deal, but this makes Grey Talon a very potent counter to heroes like Dynamo with large channeled ults in an area. Same thing for Mo and Krill, right? Let's say Mo and Krill ults someone, you just put your trap, instantly arrow, and the Mo and Krill gets cursed and is going to interrupt. So it's going to be very strong against Mo and Krill and Dynamo and potentially some other interactions, and it's also just very annoying. I think this change is probably enough to bring Grey Talon back into the meta, but I guess we'll see. Haze got some nerfs. The most interesting out of all of them is the sleep state no longer disables a target. So now when you sleep dagger, as if I can show you in game, when you sleep dagger someone, they kind of keep going at a slow pace. So this is not everybody considers this a nerf. As you can see, they just kind of keep going very slowly here. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out exactly. The upside is that the hitboxes are no longer messed up. So before, some people sleeping were kind of hard to headshot. So now this will make it easy to kind of put the tracker. However, you don't get as many headshots as you did before if they didn't get messed up. So I think overall, probably a nerf to Haze, but I guess we'll see. The dagger does proc instantly now, though, putting them to sleep, meaning people can't really dodge sleep with... Previously, they could dodge it with like stone forms and things like that, so that's going to be much harder to do. Other than that, Haze just got her movement speed nerfed on the smoke bomb, and she got her damage nerfed on the fixation and some other minor nerfs. The damage on the fixation is only the tier 3, so her early damage is going to be about the same. And on top of that, we got a slight nerf on the spirit damage from the ult, and you know, basically not many changes, but might be enough to just take her from one of the best carries in the game to just slightly worse. Now, Infernus is really spicy. Flame Dash tier 3 also makes the ability charged. We have infinite Flame Dash Infernus among us. I played it earlier. It seems insane. So basically, if you upgrade your Flame Dash to the max, you can go rapid recharge. I don't have any cooldown reduction or anything like that. I just flame dash, and you can see I'm going to do the full duration flame dash, and then there's a 3-second cooldown before I can flame dash again. So the cooldown between charges is actually 15 seconds. However, if you have rapid recharge, well, you get 60% faster time between charges, which takes out to about 7 seconds, and the cooldown starts as soon as you use flame dash, not when you end it, which means that it's about actually a 3-second cooldown, you know, between the charges, which seems pretty ridiculous, and I expect this to be nerfed. Honestly, it seems a little too good, but enjoy it while you can. I'm going to skip the Ivy and Kelvin changes. I don't think they're super interesting, and it's just like, okay, like, see, these are changes that might matter. The most interesting one was probably just the Kelvin Frost Grenade, and that also reduces stamina regeneration. So basically, if you get Frost Grenaded, you'll regen your stamina slower by the same amount of slow that the grenade does, which I think is 40%. We got some pretty crazy Lady Geist changes. So basically, her ultimate was mostly reworked. So the tier 3 for her ultimate now gives silence enemies in 15 meters radius for 3 seconds. So let me show you what that looks like. So here, as you can see, I've got 4 enemies, and if I use my ult, there's going to be a little radius, and everybody silenced for a total of 3 seconds. It's very strong, and it's pretty impressive. I don't think that this is going to be like necessarily like a huge deal, but it is definitely, in my opinion, a buff for Lady Geist. A buff that she did not need, and she was already probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest character in the game, in my opinion. The second Lady Geist change is now you get charges on your life drain if you max it. So what this means is you can life drain 4 people if you get rapid recharge. So as you can see here, I'm just going to cast life drain on all of them, and I'm just damaging all of them at the same time. And it seems pretty strong. I'm not sure exactly how big of a deal it's going to be. It needs more testing, but Lady Geist was already pretty strong. So she did lose, however, the silence on her max life drain. So it's possible that we see less people maxing it now, although the charges is a pretty interesting idea. So curious to see how it'll play out, but she doesn't have silence as easily anymore. It's only on her ultimate. But overall, I don't really think that these changes are necessarily a good thing for the game, but we'll see. Lash got a little bit of love this patch. He got some buffs for the most part. So Death Slam pretty much got all the buffs, right? So a lot of people asked me previously, oh, what do you think of the Lash ult build, etc.? Well, what I think of the Lash ult build previously was, you know, I think it's kind of funny, but I don't think it's really that good because there's a lot of counterplay to Lash ult, and I don't think it's reliable enough to like invest into it. Well, this might change because now you get, if you upgrade your ult to the max, the tier 3 upgrade gives you impact area stuns for 1 second. Might seem like a short duration, but what this does is that this guarantees follow-up on your Lash ult. So people can't just get Lash ulted and then tornado out of it, or Yamato ult, etc. Before, if you ulted a Mirage, you ulted him and then you went for the slam, the Mirage would literally just tornado you into the air and you would get 0 damage. Same for Dynamo. Dynamo would just use Quantum Entanglement. You wouldn't get any damage. And same for a bunch of other characters. So this makes Ult Lash significantly stronger. And I guess I'm interested to see exactly how it's going to play out. The cone angle was also increased, and the cast range was also increased. So overall, Lash Ult is pretty much back to its former glory, I think. And if you invest into it, you should be rewarded. So I'm going to cook up something with this build, but I think Lash should be pretty strong this patch. Magnus didn't really get too many interesting changes. I mean, they removed the 33% HP per second damage cap. So now turrets will just last a minimum of 4 seconds. And if you kill them during that time, well, they'll just be disabled, like they'll die after the 4 seconds, basically. And the turret fire rate was reduced, but the HP that they gained was increased. So a bit of an adjustment. Unclear to me how strong they're going to be exactly, but I think it's good changes. Other than that, not very interesting. Mirage Fire Scarabs now apply its drain over 4 seconds instead of front loaded, so you don't do the damage instantly, However, you can now hit the same target with it, and you can do increased damage, meaning you don't just do the damage of one scarab. Let me show you what I mean. As you can see as well, Mirage got a bit of an updated model and stuff like that, so don't be too worried about it. So let me take this target for example. I use one scarab on him. As you can see, I'll take some damage over time from the scarab. If I use it again on him, it'll simply refresh the scarab duration, and if I just keep using it and I use it again, as you can see, this target has taken over 198, 216 damage from scarabs. So that's just at level 1 without any points of scarab. You can steal 218 health from one opponent if you keep refreshing the duration of the debuff on them. This seems extremely strong, probably too strong, and I expect it to be nerfed, but if you enjoy playing Mirage, then well, feel free to abuse this while it's in the game. I'm skipping Moan Curl and Paradox, not really anything interesting, just number changes. With Pocket, we got a huge rework to the ultimate. It's now Affliction, now immediately deals 18% of current HP on application, and its DPS was basically like gutted. So the DPS is 12 base DPS, and then once you get the tier 3, you get plus 15. So once you get the tier 3, you have the old base DPS, which was 27, which is still pretty low, and the base radius is 9 meters, and you need to get the tier 3 to get your 5 meters back. So basically upgrading your ult to max is going to be mandatory. Not really a huge deal. That's pretty much all Pockets did in the first place anyway. And the spirit scaling was also nerfed, meaning in general the ult doesn't do as much DPS, but dealing 18% of current HP instantly is very strong, and you get an extra 5% when you get tier 3, meaning you deal a total of 23% of current HP to the target. And usually Pocket is an initiation tool, the ultimate is, right? So people are going to be nearly full health. So if someone has 2,000 health, you're just going to be hitting them with like a 500 damage nuke instantly with the ultimate. So I don't really see this as a Pocket nerf, even though a lot of people are like, oh, is Pocket dead? What did they do to my Pocket, etc. Curious to see how it'll play out, but from having seen Pocket in games, it doesn't really feel like Pocket is any weaker with this. And so if you're a Pocket player, don't be afraid. If you're not a Pocket player, well, unfortunately the hero is still one of the strongest heroes in the game, most likely. So 7 got a new ability called Stormcloud. So when you do his ultimate right here, you'll get extra ability. As you can see, there's like an AoE that I can activate, so I just click on it and it creates like a little storm, and then it'll do AoE damage and knock people away in that area. So if someone's hiding behind cover, you can use that to kind of like force them out of cover. You can use that to just kind of like, I don't know, move people, destruct people. It's just something that gives you a little bit of extra damage and extra burst in your ultimate, and gives you an extra reason to use it. I think it's probably a good change. And if you max your ultimate, you'll also be able to like float at a certain speed. So if I do no cooldown here with my ultimate max, as you can see, I'm able to kind of move a little bit. It's not much, but it is enough to make it so you're not a completely stationary target. So Vindictus changes are mostly just damage changes, like number changes, so I'm not going to cover them too much. I try to keep the interesting things mostly. Viscous got an interesting rework, which is Puddle Punch tier 3 now causes the punch to become a heavy melee. This gives him a ton of damage on Puddle Punch, and I expect this to be nerfed because it seems extremely strong, and I think Viscous is probably broken right now, even though he was already one of the best heroes of last patch. Warden got some nerfs, but really not much. And so like his tier 2 and tier 3 from his ultimate were changed. Honestly, I don't even think it's really that big of a nerf, if at all. His last stand resistance was reduced, so this is clearly a nerf. However, it only goes on cooldown for 20 seconds when interrupted rather than full, so this is a buff. And the spirit power scaling for the fire rate was reduced from 0.25 to 0.22. This doesn't really matter that much because if you played Gun Warden, you didn't build that much spirit in the first place, so it's going to affect you a little bit, but honestly, I think Warden's still going to be one of the strongest characters in the game and should still be high priority. So Wraith got some interesting changes. I'm not going to read all of them, but essentially one thing to know is that your full auto tier 3 now gives you spirit lifesteal and bullet lifesteal. She now has, once you get a tier 2 in full auto, she now has default spirit scaling, and telekinesis was completely reworked. So let's take a look at what it looks like. So if we look at telekinesis, instead of stunning people now, it just kind of like lifts them and then puts them on the ground, and it will silence and disarm them. It does stun them, so it's still an interrupt, right? So if you're thinking about interrupting things like mow and curl grab or singularity or things, it does still work, but the stun itself doesn't actually last any time, pretty much. It's just instant, whereas before it lasted like 1.75 seconds once you had 2 upgrades into it or whatever. Now instead, once they're slammed into the ground, it silences and disarms them. So if you put 2 points in it, you get an extra 0.75 seconds of silence and disarm, and if you max it, hit, it bounces to an additional target, like so. So you have two people that are disarmed and silenced. I will say that this seems very strong, especially 3.25 seconds. But if you get any additional duration, let's say you get decay and duration extender, for example, then at that point you're silencing and disarming for nearly 4 seconds, which is a long time, especially to have two targets silenced and disarmed. And the bounce range seems to be like somewhat generous, right? It's not insane, but it does seem to be generous enough that the person doesn't need to be right besides them for them to hit. Yamato got some slight buff. She can use grapple on ally heroes once she gets the tier 3 upgrade for grapple. So I don't really think that that's going to be a huge case, because I don't think people are going to max the grapple instantly anyway. The big deal is the cast time was reduced for the ult, and it no longer has a post cast time of 0.6 seconds. So basically when you ult, you'll be able to go on someone much quicker, which is actually a very significant buff for Yamato. I don't think she needed much to become really good again. I think she was already like pretty good. She was definitely playable, but now I think she'll be really good again. So, you know, if you're a Yamato player, I guess it's a good patch for you. I don't know if she'll be like OP, but she'll definitely be very, very strong. That's about it for the changes. As for the last thing, I didn't cover, but if you go in the main menu now on the leaderboards, you'll be able to see people's ranks in the leaderboards, right? So you can see like, okay, like how many people are Eternus 6, for example. You can see that in North America, we have 48 Eternus 6 players, whereas like in Europe, for example, if you look at the amount of Eternus 6 players, they have a total of 74 Eternus players. So you can compare things like that, and it also shows you the main characters that the people play, except for me, because when you look at my name, I have no characters. So according to the leaderboards, I don't play any characters, so that's kind of weird, but regardless, just thought it was a little bit funny. And yeah, that's gonna be it for me, guys. I'm gonna be playing a lot of PoE too, but I'm still gonna be playing a lot of Deadlock. There's gonna be meta report in a couple of days, and PoE is not gonna affect the Deadlock content. It might reduce the stream frequencies or duration a little bit, but other than that, I'm still gonna be making the videos as always. Thank you for the support. Thank you for watching. Watch my stream live if you enjoy it, etc. And I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.